Welcome to LRTV and tonight's edition of Legends 15. Our guest tonight joined the club in 1956 as a flying right back for Arnason Rangers Football Club. He came to Lasswade not to play rugby but to up his own personal ante in his fitness and improve his football. But it was to be the start of a long association with the club. And in 1962 he was appointed our secretary, and a position he was to hold for no less than 40 years. But he took a year out and a step down for a step up to become club president in 1973. Well worthy of legend status without any question. One of life's real characters, and he tells me a nicer guy you'll never meet. So time to find out who tonight's guest is on Legends 15. Tommy Gray, welcome to Legends 15. It's great to have you on the show tonight. Your team is really going to inspire some debate because there's some real key players. We've been so far three teams out of three, and they've been well overlooked on this occasion, and for very good cause. We've had a discussion earlier about this, and you've validated your reasons very well, validated them very well. So just a quick overview of your team. You've got 7 from the 50s, 60s and 70s. You've got 3 from the 80s. 2 from the 90s and noughties, and 3 from the noughties in total. This is going to be interesting. Are you ready?
I agree with that.
But I mean, I'd just like to sort of touch on your time at Lasswade. Tommy, you've been in the club and associated with the club for quite a long time. You know, it's always nice to ask people like yourself who've been involved in Lasswade for a long time, what's been your sort of golden memory in your purple patch for Lasswade? What's been your favourite time here at the club?
Was when we started to think about having a ground of our own, and we ran the barbecues most successfully down in Lasswade.
Is that you thinking of your stomach again?
It was a lot of money we brought in. We got some fun as well. I remember George Anderson turning one of the groups that were going to play there, the jury from Glasgow, because they were sort of unshaven and dishevelled looking, and no way was George got let through the gate, and they were claiming they were the band, and George wouldn't have this. But eventually they got in. So that's one of my purple patches when we got the ground here. After that was the climb that the club made from just a small junior club all the way up to playing twice at Murrayfield. In front of quite a big crowd. Yep. We were very pleased with that, and delighted to win them both. I think we'll be the only club that retained that trophy.
That's done back-to-back Shield wins.
Yes, that's right. Yep. So these are the things, and then coming up to Premier 3. I never thought we'd reach the height of that, but with some hard work and some very good players, we managed to make it, and I've thoroughly enjoyed my time coming up there.
It's not finished yet, though.
No, I hope not.
Tommy, the one thing that's come out of doing the Legends 15 for the last 3 guests we've had so far is that, and it's been actually commented on by Ian Barrs in particular, that if you look at the players we've had through the club over the years, if you could put them together on a pitch in one particular game, what a team, you know, what a squad actually we could put together.
Yeah, I think if we'd put Rusty and Neil Clark when Neil first came, that half-back partnership, then we had, I thought, one of the best back rows as we were climbing, and even their coach Kobe thought that one of the best back rows he'd ever worked with.
So brilliant. That's brilliant to get an endorsement like that from somebody who's coached so many teams at great levels in Scottish rugby. That's a real endorsement, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah. And for him, having played at a higher level and coached at a higher level, to give his time here as he did and be successful, was great.
Great. Well, Tommy, just having a quick look at your team sheet, I think that yourself and George Anderson have been in cahoots. I think that you're up in the ante to take on Ian Barr and Alan Bain, because there's a lot of favouritism towards your own generation, and quite rightly so. I mean, at the end of the day, Tommy, this is just one man's opinion, and we're going to hear from you just very shortly the reasons why and who you've picked in the various positions. I know for a fact there's one man tonight who, if he doesn't send you a telegram through the post, He's going to put you down for a knighthood, I think, because he's been asking me week in, week out, when is it going to happen? Is he ever going to become a legend? And he's finally arrived. But so we'll go straight into the coalface. Pulling on the number 1 jersey is a man who I played with in the 80s and 90s. I always thought he was a great player, and you've obviously thought the same yourself. Number 1 is Billy Knowles.
Yes, I thought Billy, from the time when he started the club as a young boy, came to the front row when he was only 15. So he had a long, hard shift, but he really did well. He was captain of the club, and he went on to play at Harrington when Harrington were in the old National One, which was a Premier club in Scotland at that time, Premier League in Scotland at that time, along with my other prop, Nick Hamilton. Well, a lot of people.
We'll come to him in a minute, but I mean, the one thing Billy's going to be sitting there thinking is, I've managed to unseat a British Lion and probably the most decorated player that Lasswade's ever produced in the form of Peter Wright, who incidentally he's been the first name on the team sheet for the last 3 teams. But hey, you know, Billy deserves his place, and he's now officially a legend of Lasswade. So I think he'll be buying you a pint next Saturday. And pulling on the number 2 jersey is a man who's made it into the Legends team again, like Billy has for the first week, and it's a man from the 60s and 70s, Ian Smart. Tell us a bit about Ian.
Ian, he was big for hooker. He had good hands. He was very athletic. His throwing in was immaculate. And
he could have got a game for Scotland last Saturday.
He certainly would. After watching that, either that should have played Gray. They always miss a Gray.
So did he spend most of his time at Lasswade, Ian Smart?
Yes, all the time. Right. Ian, unfortunately, had to give up when he broke a leg. And he actually came back about 5 years after that, and unfortunately broke a leg again. So it wasn't funny. Right. So I think that was the last of it.
Well, if there's any consolation, he goes down in history as a legend of Lasswade. So 2 broken legs later, he's finally made it. Pulling on the jersey and completing the front row is a man mounting himself and a great player in the 7 for Lasswade, Nicholl Hamilton.
Yes, Nick was a very good prop. He got a lot of praise from when he was here. He was strong, he never let you down, and he always had a smile on his face, Nicholl, even though he would take a batter at times. And of course he went to Harrington as well, and played in the team with Billy against the likes of Hoyt and Gala, Watsonians, Barramure.
And with the 2 of them together in the Haddington front row, they more than held their own.
Yes, more than held their own. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's a bit of a family affair really in the front 5, because it comes as no surprise that pulling on the 5 jersey and making it 4 teams out of 4 is a man from the 50s, 60s and 70s, and I think everybody knows who we're talking about here, Bob Knowles.
Yes. And Bob's been a great servant to the club, both as a player and on the committee. He was a good captain. He would never take the presidency. Bob's shy in that way, but on the field he was a terror. A mountain of a man, game, took on everything. I remember one time through at Mar, it was before one of the Scotland games, and Gordon Brown hadn't had a game for 2 or 3 weeks. It was after that Fracas had at Murrayfield, remember, with Hardy, was it? Yeah. So he had to get a game in. So he was playing against us through there, and about the 3rd line out there, he rises in the air, and Bob walked through underneath him. And saw Gordon lying on his back, and he's sort of like this. So Bob, after that, sort of left him alone. And he says to Bob at half-time, what about what? He says, I know when a man means it. It said to Bob, once more and you're going off. So that was Bob's list against Gordon Brown. Yeah. But he was always like that. Not a big man, not too tall for a second row, but very strong, big hands. good handler of the ball as well.
What's becoming very apparent to me in week guest 4 and team 4 is he's very quickly beginning Willie John McBride status at Lasswade anyway. You know, he's very much a leader in his time, a fantastic player who, like Willie John McBride's, played through 3 decades of rugby as well. Yeah. So he's well and truly inked in and maintains his legend status in this team. But pulling on the jersey next to him, not jersey number 4, is a man called Alan Main from the 80s. Tell us about Alan.
Alan Bain.
Alan Bain, sorry.
Alan Bain.
Alan Bain. My apologies, AJ. Alan Bain it is.
Yes. Alan, actually, this came about through Bob and I had a talk, and I asked Bob who was the best second row he'd played with. Now, that's talking about a long time, 30 years. And Bob had a thought about it. He says, well, a lot of people don't give Alan Bain the credit he should have got. He says Alan was always strong, always pulled his weight in the line out, more offside than ever in the line out, but sometimes he got away with that.
Bob carried on well, though, didn't he?
Well, yes, the two of them got on well together. Even when Alan tried to punch him in the club and burst the club ball, but I'll forget, that was quite
We'll overlook that.
Yes, I hope Ian will as well.
Well, I tell you, that's one man you've made very happy tonight, because, I mean, he was asking me as well some time ago, is nobody going to pick me? He says, am I never going to reach legend status? Well, Alan Bain, you finally arrived. Congratulations. So we're looking at Bob Knowles and Alan Bain, second row. That's quite a tidy second row, actually. Going into the back row, there's some familiar faces. There's a good mixture of youth and experience here, and one guy who has to be said, he's been totally overlooked, I think, up to now, and I would absolutely pencil him in myself, I think. And I'm not talking about anybody related to me either. We'll go to number 6 jersey, because this is the man I think who's going to be phoning you and also putting you down for a knighthood, because he's been asking me every time the Legends videos come out when he's going to become a legend and if he's going to become a legend. But Richard Borthwick, you finally arrived. You pull on the 6 jersey in Tommy Gray's team. So Richard Borthwick, a player from the late 90s and through the noughties, sadly retired last year, but a great servant to the club.
Yes, and a very enthusiastic player. Richard gave his all when he was on the field. He was quick off the back row, a good tackler, determined, always wanted to win, and he played with his heart, and that's what I like about Richard. That's why he got his position at wing forward. Yeah,
he's a player who could definitely have played it really easily at a higher level. Yeah. But fortunately for us, his loyalties lay with Lasswade, and that's where he laid his hat down, and that's where he finished his days of rugby. Tragically, a bit short of his time, but there we go. And pulling on the jersey number 7 is a man who's made it 4 weeks out of 4. Lasswade's captain last year. Gavin Brown.
Gavin, yes. Gavin's a good player, a magic player actually, and we were glad when he came back to us to give us his experience, and he helped when he was captain and with the training and that, and encouraging the young boys to come up to play better in a good team. And Gavin was a leader and very experienced. I thought he was very, very good when he played with us.
He was certainly central to bringing a lot of guys like Bernie Hennessy and these guys to the club, you know, to help Lasswade move up through the leagues as well.
Yes, that was the thing as well. And along with that, you know, it was his experience alone helped us. You could see it on the field, and the boys looked to him for his leadership, and he got that. And I was proud that Gavin came back and gave us his time with us.
Good. Well, I was delighted to come back, I can tell you that. It's a fun part of his rugby playing time as well. Now, this is the guy I think, without question, I completely overlooked him, and I think what a find, really. A man from the 80s, a man mountain, a bit of a Sherman tank, really, Simon Edwards.
Yes, we're fortunate to get Simon. He was in the farming fraternity, and he was going around, and he played for Newcastle Gosford, and he was out with an injury, and he'd been speaking to Ian Barr, and Ian got him to come along and train, coach and train with us because of his injury, and gradually the injury got better, and he decided he would have a go, and he certainly was worth his place. As you say there, Scott, he was a man mountain, a one-man tank, and he gave us a lot of fun watching him. Well, fun for me, I don't know about the opposition. Yes, I think he deserves his place. He didn't play a long time with us. No. He went on to play for Kelso, which shows him good a player he was.
How progressive he was, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I remember Ian Barr picking his Legends team, and he was talking about how Stevie Dick was off the base of the scrum at number 8. Chocolate was an immovable force, you know, and nearly always scored over 10 yards. But I'd imagine Simon Edwards would have matched him yard for yard, you know.
Definitely,
Yeah.
I'm sure of that. Yes, and what Ian said, Stevie Dick was a good player, had a very good right hand. I'm not going into that. But,
we're not talking about his drinking hand either.
No. He led with the right.
Okay, well that concludes the forwards make-up, and your half-back partnership has to be said, and it's nice to see that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. Same to the last three weeks with the last 3 Legends teams. We'll go to number 9 first, Clarkey himself.
Yes, we were lucky to get him. He came to us from Musselburgh, I believe. I don't know what went wrong there, but he certainly gave us something at scrum half that we hadn't seen for a long time. A very good player. Skillful, very tricky, quick off the mark, and with a good pass. A very good player. I like to watch him.
Yeah, well, Musselburgh's loss was our gain, I suppose, because he's been a great servant to us, and there's no question about it. He was instrumental in both those Shield finals we played in at Murrayfield, especially when it was quite evident that our oppositions at the time on both occasions were targeting him to try and obviously take him out of the equation. Yeah. Well, he would have made a fantastic pairing, as we've discussed earlier on, with our New Zealand player that we had, Andy Reid, who was a great servant to the club, pulling on the 10 jersey next to him.
Oh, yes. He was a fantastic player, a typical number 10, New Zealand number 10. He had everything, the attributes, his kicking, his handling the ball, his eye for a gap was brilliant. And if he had been able to play alongside Neil Clark, it would have been some partnership. It would have blasted through the leagues.
Well, what's also come from the discussions we've had over the weeks was that George Anderson said, I don't think we'll ever see another Rusty. He may be right, but I hope that's not the case. You know, I'm sure through the sands of time, somebody else will come to the surface and come through for us. But what was also quite funny was Alan Bain talking about how Rusty had just turned up from New Zealand, straight off the plane on a Thursday, into training that night with Ian Barr, and played for us on the Saturday. And he said afterwards to George Anderson, well, that was a great game and a good win, wasn't it? And what do you think of our new 10? And George just said, he's distinctly average.
Typical George.
But unfortunately, he's eaten his words since, and that's great. But yeah, a great half-back pairing there, phenomenal. So we'll go into the backs, the midfield, and the flyer on the left wing is a man from the 60s, Davy Kirkwood.
David Kirkwood, yes. David was a very, very good player. He liked to... we used to call him lucky. He always got the bounce of the ball somehow, and David said it wasn't luck, it was good play. And I'd give him that now. He could either play on the wing or at full-back, and he always gave his best. He sometimes talked about going back to play for Heriots, but there were too many good full-backs at Heriots.
Well, in the 60s, that would be Ian Ken Scotland at the time, was it?
That's Kenny Scotland was playing then, yes.
So he'd be holding the jersey at Golden Acre.
I don't think David would have made that.
Well, that's great. And in the midfield, we've got 2 players, one from the 60s and one from the 60s and 70s. But pulling on your 12 jersey is Mike Barker.
Yes. Mike came to us out of the blue. He was a very good, an excellent centre actually, well built, something like the Simon Edwards, and powerful. He could break a tackle. He could see a move before it came off. He was a very, very good player. The only thing happened, the selectors came out from Edinburgh to see him. They were going to select him for a district side, and then they must have been investigating things. And it came up that he had played rugby league. He said he hadn't played rugby league, he'd only gone down for a trial, but that was enough. Right. We fought hard, tooth and nail, to try and keep him. Alan Burlington, who was a Coalboard solicitor, went out of his way to try and convince the SRU of his innocence, but to no avail. Right. I'd like to tell the SRU that actually played for Edinburgh Wanderers after that is Mike Barker, and he played in the front row for them.
Oh, right. Well, I mean, it's it might have been questionable anyway. If you had got at that point in time, if you had got district status, would you have been at Lasswade for much longer?
Oh, I don't think so. I think it would have been picked up. I think he only came to us because of this doubt.
Do you think he would have gone the distance? Would he have gone further than district?
Yes, I'm sure he would. A very good thing.
Because, I mean, let's face it, he's from a point of view of our Legends teams, one of the most contested positions are the midfield on this team sheet. We've had some big names like Roger Jackman, Benny Hennessy for himself, Don Ross. There's been some great players. Martin Armstrong. There's been some great players looked at for this position, and Mike Barker's obviously, from your point of view, stands head and shoulders above them all.
I would think so.
Yeah, great. Pulling on the jersey next to him, and pulling the 13 jersey on, a man from the 60s is Ian Chubb.
Ian Chubb. Ian was pretty light, but a great tackler. Fair hair, which showed up on the pitch, of course. But he, again, given any room, and Mike Barker would have been able to give him that, or Bernie, and that would all he really needed. He was very quick and very good hand, and he could set up the pitch alight.
Was he a bit like David Duckham? He stood out?
Oh yes, he did stand out.
The blonde hair?
Blonde hair, yeah. I loved to see him going to tackle. He always went in low, and the player went over his shoulder.
Tremendous.
Oh, it was.
Tremendous.
Great to see.
Uncompromising.
Yes.
So, and then on the wing three-quarter, the right wing, a man from the 60s, George Tennant. Tell us about George.
George, I think of George as a flyer, he was. And he was strongly built, a good runner, and he could take a ball on, take his winger on. He wasn't afraid of anything. Tackle a thick wall if you had them to. And I like players with a bit of heart, and George was one of them.
Well, I mean, you can tell you've got a bit of a football background as well, because you've obviously chosen players with a lot of gas and pace as well, which as footballers, it's massive. It's the difference between obviously beating your opposite man and not, and that's obviously quite influential in your decisions for your backs there. But fair play to you. So, I mean, the rest of the guys at the club, with the exception of maybe George Anderson and a few other ones, might not know who these guys are. But I'm sure you're big enough and broad enough to shoulders to stand up and say why, which is great.
Bob Knowles will remember him. There's not that many. Joe Whittaker, although Joe at the time was on the district committee more, so he was away. He didn't see a lot. These 60 type players because of his experience with the district union.
Now, pulling on the fullback jersey, a man who George Anderson obviously thought a lot of as well, and justifiably so, a man from the 50s, Ian Shand.
Well, Ian, he should never have stayed at Lasswade. He got the offer time and time again, but Ian was a club man. He liked playing with Lasswade, a Christian, and
a good bus driver as well, by all accounts.
Bus driver, yes. I was telling Scott earlier about the time we were coming back from Gala in the bus, and we stopped at Stow for a couple of pints, as you do. We're in the bar there when Ian was captain, and he said, "Right, lads, 10 minutes." So 10 minutes was up, and I think it was Alec Burton went out to see no bus. And so, I'll take it round the corner. No, he'd take it home. So we phoned the president, who was George Anderson, and said to George, "Look, George, the captain's taking the bus away. We're all still stranded here in Stow." And George says, "Well, you deserve it." Put the phone down. So that was that.
Brilliant. All's fair in love and war. No doubt you would take a bit of stick for that for a while.
Oh, yes, he did. He did indeed. But Ian wasn't a drinker, as I say. Orange juice. But he would come in and have a drink with you. He didn't object to the boys enjoying themselves at all. But that was Ian.
Oh, great. John, Tommy, this is great. One thing we said we'd touch on, at the end of your selection was just a few of the guys, the nearly guys who were almost on the side.
Yeah.
You've a few guys you reckon that were very, very close in the toss of a coin as to whether they win or not.
Yes. One, Neil Murray.
Yeah, the fullback.
Yes. He came up through with the team that came up through all the leagues from Nat 5 right up to, and in fact he played
lovely running angles.
That's right, and he played in Premier 3 for us. He played against Harrington In fact, they got injured, unfortunately. But he was getting on. He had a lot of pace, which I like to see. He could join the line, cutting it there.
His timing and the angles of running were fantastic, weren't they?
Yes, he was.
Because he wasn't the biggest, he wasn't the bulkiest of players.
No. But I remember Greenock, I'm taking 2 players out at one time, flying tackle.
Is that right?
Yes. And I took them both out. That was a great thing to see.
And I think you had Donald Hearn. He was a close call.
Yeah, very close. Because I like Donald. He was great in the line out. A good handler of the ball. He's got that long breaking stride that a number 8 needs. And
fantastic engine.
Fantastic, yes. Run all day.
He's a player with a great heart, good, and he's a player too that could transcend through the decades of rugby and the type of rugby that's been played. He's still a modern player today.
That's right. Yes. Oh yes.
Although most players, a lot of players now are gym monkeys, a fair size to them, and Donald's for all that isn't a gym monkey, but he punched well above.
If we had just maybe another stone on, then he could have made Scotland.
Yeah, but for what he lacked in bulk, he made up for in technique, technique and ability.
Oh yes, that was it. Of course. Yes.
And in a bid to placate Peter Wright, I think it has to be said, he did actually make it onto the bench.
Yes, he did. I like Peter. Fiery, very fiery. In fact, if he had stayed with us, I think he might have his rugby might have finished there. I think the SRU would have banned him for life. And it was the best thing he did, that he went on, moved on to Boroughmuir, and they were able to control his violence and the temper away. I mean, Peter never stopped talking to referees on the field.
I don't think he has yet.
No, you can hear him on TV or Radio 5 live. It's still the same man, but very proper spoken now.
Yeah, apparently,
from one of the blacksmiths.
I think that's when the red on air signs on, he's very properly spoken. So Peter's close ball. Could you care to sort of to divulge us a story you told me earlier about Billy Knowles? You were just talking about how Peter's temperament perhaps was the thing that cost him your selection, but Billy Knowles on the other hand was his temperament which made his selection. Just tell us a little story about Billy.
We were playing in a semi-final against Club for the West, I forget the name of them, East Kilbride, a semi-final of the old Murrayfield Cup. Back pitch at Murrayfield, and it was quite a tight game. They were a hard side, to say the least, and Billy got in a wee bit trouble with his opposite prop, and the prop swung a punch at Billy, and Billy looked at him, smiled, and kissed him on the forehead, which the whole pack brought up. Our boys broke up laughing. They broke up fighting. The referee had a wee while to quieten it all down. But Billy, that was Billy. He never had a dusty moment in a game at all, ever. But hard, fair, and a good captain, good leader. So that was why he got
I've just come up with an idea. Perhaps he should start mentoring Dale. If Dale was to go about kissing folk instead of punching them, he'd be on the pitch a bit longer.
Yes, that's true. Dale had as many yellow cards last season as a full-time game. 80 minutes it was up.
I believe so. Listen, Tommy, that's fantastic. Once again, thank you very much. There'll be a lot of debate, I'd imagine, over this team, as there has been for the other ones previously. Thank you for your input. I hope you've enjoyed being a guest on the Legends 15. You are obviously a legend yourself, although you've not made it into the team sheet. And so, guys, that's the guest number 4. We've one more to come. And so far, 4 players have made it 4 weeks, 4 teams on the trot. And join us next time to find out who makes the cut in Legends 15.